By the way, I think that is a fantastic question. What was the first piece of art? Because that's really the first time that the outside world begins to take the shape of a story for you, and you begin to make sense of where you are, where you're at. In my case, since I was born in Los Angeles and spent the first 5 years of my life there, it was movies. Go to the movies, go to Western movies, society melodramas, space epics, whatever was popular at the time, all in black and white. So that was my first exposure to art. And then when my family and I moved to Mexico when I was 6 years old, the main art form that I went into was American movies at the at the local Ocampo movie theater. They would take all of the American movies that they could get and they would put them together usually in triple features. So you would go to the Ocampo at about maybe noon and you'd get out of there around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, having seen three monster movies or a Western and occasionally a Mexican movie. I learned how to speak Spanish very quickly being a kid. So I got to saw some of the wonderful comedies of Cantinflas, who was, this great, well, I'm not sure, sort of like a Charlie Chaplin. He was like a Mexican Charlie Chaplin, very funny. I also saw some Mexican ranchera movies, which were Westerns. And at the time, the probably the most popular Mexican actor was a guy named Pedro Infante, who has attained legendary status in Mexico. He is like their James Dean. Everybody knows, including people who were born 50 years after he died. And I fell in love with Pedro Infante as well. He was a singing cowboy, wonderful voice, and a rascal. So that was my first exposure to art. Surrounded as I was by Mexican art, which is some of the most stunning, wonderful art, I think, in the world. I deeply appreciate now. I don't think I noticed much of it except for the gory stuff. Mexicans had a tradition of violence and conquest. It never seemed to go away. Many wars, they never won a single war. So a lot of their art represented their misfortunes, starting from the time when the Aztecs were calling the shots. So you'd look around and you'd see depictions in the form of murals or paintings or even the cover of your textbook when you went to school of people killing each other, ripping each other's hearts out, fighting Spaniards in dressed in iron while they were totally naked. The Hispanics, the Mexicans. So art for me was adventure. It was escape. And it was a kind of subtle reminder when I was in Mexico that I was surrounded by the possibility of violence. And at that point in my life, Mexico was a much poorer country and not at all unlike in a funny way what Russia was like at its worst. All the men were alcoholic. This is a terrible generalization, but there was a lot of alcoholism. The women were the ones who were holding the society and the families together. And there would be outbreaks of violence almost every other weekend near where we were. Didn't affect us, thank God, but I was aware of that. And the art kind of like made it real.